Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have a special guest. She is the author of the book The Gift of a Punishment Free Childhood, no other than Miss Rebecca Wolf.
Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Rebecca, and can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, my name is Rebecca Woulfe, and I am a parenting mentor and recent author of a book. And it is my pleasure to work with parents and help them to create a strong parent childhood bond and also to create a more peaceful and loving household.
Definitely, and congratulations for your new book. What books or authors are you currently reading or recommend?
So, I would recommend several books on parenting. I have recently reread Alfie Kohn's Punishment by Rewards and would recommend that. I also am a fan of Dr. Catherine Cole, who wrote Redirecting Children's Behavior. So these are the books that sit on my nightstand just to stay current.
Oh, interesting areas of books. Miss Rebecca, so how has the publishing process been for you?
So, this is my first time, and I did go through independent publishing, although I did work with a publishing coach, and it was relatively smooth, although it's amazing how many details there are that go into publishing. I was able to work with a great editor who did a few rounds of editing for me, and then my coach also helped with so much of the additional applications and how to work with Amazon and tips on how to ensure that your book is readable and available. So, but for the most part, it was smooth. It took a little longer than I thought. It took almost a year. It was about 10 months. So, but overall, a very good process and experience.
What inspired you to become an author?
So, several things inspired me to become an author. I was very obviously interested in parenting since that's the topic. I have four daughters, and I recognized that the importance of parenting and how important it is in supporting not only a good family of our own, but it also carries over into children's future relationships. And so, um, I did a ton of research when my children were young, and then also observed that our country and world really has witnessed quite a bit more violence, and in particular, the school shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado, where I'm from, really got me thinking about the why. You know, what brought those right, young men full of potential to take the lives of others and then take their own life. And of course, there are many, many, many factors that contribute to something like that. But their primary motive was that they wanted to punish those classmates, those individuals who may have bullied them or may have ridiculed them. And so, thinking through that idea of punishment, and really, children learn what they live. And so, what if children didn't live with punishment? What if we created a home environment where children didn't punish? And so that was the theory of why I became an author. And then I will also share that I wrote the majority of this book during the pandemic. And uh, because there wasn't a lot to do when we were stuck at home in the US, I would spend time almost every day working on my book. So, a couple of things that motivated the writing of this book.
So, Miss Rebecca, can you tell us about your writing process?
Yeah. Um, so a few things come to mind when I think about my writing process. Um, One I'll share is there's a book out there called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And in there, she encourages people who are writing to not be nervous about that first draft. Let that first draft be messy, 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 messy. And so part of my writing process is when I'm doing that first draft, I'm not worried about having it be perfect. I tell myself, even if the order of the chapters is wrong, or even the content within the chapter needs to be reordered, all of that is fixable. But that the most important thing is in that first draft is just to get your ideas down and to write, and not worry about perfection. So I certainly take that to heart. I write, from my heart, and I try to make it a very joyful experience, not worrying about perfection. So that's one component of my writing style. The other piece is to just make time on a regular basis. So for me, it wasn't important that I set aside 3 or 4 hours. Sometimes all I would have is a half an hour or maybe an hour. But by doing that regularly, you make regular progress. And so pretty much every weekday, I would get up and write for about a half hour or an hour and just made steady progress.
Very well said, Miss Rebecca. So, what challenges have you faced in your writing career?
I have faced, I would say one is, I think many of our listeners have probably heard of this before, but it's called imposter syndrome, right? That questioning of, who am I to write a book? Or is it going to be good enough? Or will people read it? And so I think one of the challenges is recognizing that pretty much all of us have something to give, and that, um, the even if this book only changes one life or 10 lives, it will have been worth writing because it can have such an impact on individuals. So, certainly, imposter syndrome was a challenge. And I think just being patient in the publishing process, right? It can be challenging to have to wait for editors to get through your book, or to, wait for Amazon or Ingram to approve your book, right? One of the challenges is just being patient.
Certainly, Miss Rebecca. So, how do you handle writer's block?
So when I run into a couple ways, sometimes if I would get up and it'd be time to write and nothing was coming, I would give myself permission to do something else with the book, whether that is brainstorm some titles or do a little bit of research, because it's always helpful to look and see what some of the research says. So giving myself permission to perhaps not write that day. Or the other piece is somewhat of what I said before, is not to worry about the quality of the writing when you first write it. It's just write something. It's write that first sentence. And it's kind of like priming the pump. Once you get one sentence down, and then you get a whole paragraph, and then pretty soon it starts to flow.
How do you approach research for your books?
So I typically do research much like a academic researcher. That's my background. I think I've shared before that one of the things that really inspired me to write was after I completed my dissertation for my PhD, really recognizing that I enjoyed writing, recognized writing as a way to learn, as a way to express ideas, as a way to really dig deep into a topic. It wasn't necessarily just regurgitating information. And so much of the research that I did for my book was academic in nature, right? Using peer reviewed databases, looking at what oftentimes researchers in the field of psychology have done, studies on families, on children, on what are the outcomes of punishment. So, primarily academic research.
So, can you share a memorable moment from your writing career?
Hmm. There's lots of memorable moments. I mean, I think certainly for most authors, the most memorable is when you see that first published book, right? When you get that tangible book that you can hold in your hands, and it's got your name on it, and it's got the beautiful cover that I worked with a graphic designer on that. So certainly, I will always remember getting that first book in the mail. And then, of course, getting your first sales, right? That's always exciting to see that people are purchasing your book and that it's getting out there into the world. And so, certainly remember both of those events.
Certainly. So, what advice do you have for aspiring writers out there?
My advice to inspiring writers is just write, to not be concerned about the end product, to not be concerned about how long it takes, to really just listen to your heart, listen to your inspiration, sit down, take time to write, to certainly not. Uh, don't beat yourself up. Don't berate yourself if you don't write, as long as you thought that you needed to write or that it wasn't coming out exactly like you want it. To really try to make writing be as joyful as possible. To Because what you're feeling when you're writing is what's going to come through to your readers, and so bringing your best self, your joyful self to the writing, and then just write would be my advice to aspiring writers. Enjoy the process.
Definitely, people stop procrastinating and enjoy the process. Who knows, you will be one of the best in the making, like Miss Rebecca Wolf. So, Miss Rebecca, how do you balance writing with the other aspects of your life?
Yeah, I have a very busy life, and I think that to balance writing, you need to just set aside time for it. And again, it doesn't have to be a big block of time. If we think that we have to find a 2 hour window or a 3 hour window, then that's going to slow your progress. But to identify those times in the day where you can sneak out half an hour or 45 minutes, that's enough. That's enough to keep it moving. Obviously, there's days when you do get to dive in for a few hours, like a Saturday morning. But for the most part, just carving out those little pieces of time. And then again, sometimes when you sit down, just do one thing, right? Don't have a list of 10 things that, oh, I've got to try to get all of this done in this window. Just get one thing done. Get If it's one page, if it's one paragraph. And so I work to make sure that I spend time um, at least 2 or 3 times a week now on other aspects. I'm currently working on a online course that people will be able to take with my book, and so now I'm carving out those little pieces of time to work on that online course.
Yes, online course that be interesting. What are the some topics or themes that you are passionate about exploring in your writing?
So, as far as content, I think that I'm passionate about helping parents see that there's another way to parent besides how many of us were raised. I'm passionate about getting the word out that children don't need to be punished in order to learn. They can learn at home in many ways. This the way that they learn at school, right? They get information, they process it, they think through it, they're engaged in learning how to change their behavior. And so, certainly, as the title suggests, that's my primary passion. But I think, in addition to that, after raising my children without punishment, there was kind of a surprise at the end. And in fact, it was when I was writing the last chapter of my book. And what I realized is that one of the gifts of parenting without punishment is it's the gift to the parent, right? I'm passionate about letting parents know that it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be angry some of the time. That punishing and trying to control another human's behavior is really exhausting. And so, second to creating that great environment for children at home is really creating a better experience for parents. So that would definitely be the second message that I'm passionate about sharing.
Well said, Miss Rebecca. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Italy. Grazie mille tutto Italy for supporting this podcast. Because in Piedmont, I got 44% out and share. Latume at 26, Lombardy at 10%, Tuscany at 4%, Trentino Alto Adige at 3%, Emilia Romagna 3%, Veneto 3%, Aquila 3%, Campania 3%, and a lot more. Grazie mille tutto Italy for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Miss Rebecca Wolf. The gift of a punishment-free childhood. How do you craft that?
That's a it feels like forever, but it wasn't forever.
It'll take
So
forever.
yeah, I spent, I would say, probably a year writing it. And that was kind of that first draft. And then what was interesting is I let it sit for a little while, trying to decide what to do with it. Maybe looking a little bit for a an agent, um, and then finally decided one day that I needed to get back on it and bring it back out. So there was probably a 1 year gap, so a year of writing, a 1 year gap, and then I got back into it. I think I had some fresh eyes because I had been away from it for a while. So I went through and did a little bit more organizing, a little bit more editing, uh, rearranged some of the chapters, and was then at that point able to find my book coach. It was a reference from a friend, and then working with the coach, she helped me find a editor, and then working with the editor was an amazing experience. It's those that fresh set of eyes can see so much more than what you can see, especially if you're the author, and really felt like the editors did an amazing job of helping me to see how to really best structure it for the reader. Brought the focus to the reader more so than what I had done, and then of course all of the grammar and structure. So that was another year, and then we were able to get that printed book on my doorstep.
Yes, what a feeling when you first receive your copy of your book. How do you handle feedback or criticism of your work?
As I was writing this, and some of the ideas are relatively new, and maybe not necessarily things that people will recognize right away. And so I've kind of was prepping myself even from the beginning that there will be naysayers. And I certainly have run into that, even a family um, friend who said, well, there's no way that you can teach a child how to behave without punishing them, right? And so I do my best to recognize that there's different opinions out there. And so when someone pushes back, especially like that, my response is, I absolutely respect what you think. My experience is different. And I think that we can support children without punishing them. Another one just recently is someone said, well, how in the world would a child ever get a moral compass if you don't punish them? And it made me smile because really our children learn from the way that we live, or the children learn what they live. And the best way to support a child in ensuring that their moral compass is what you want it to be, is for your moral compass to be what you want it to be, because they're going to watch you. They're going to follow in your footsteps, and they really can develop, I think, even better moral compass without having to worry about being punished when they make mistakes.
Certainly. So, what are some of your goals or aspiration for this book?
My number one aspiration is, of course, to change lives, to really support young, children, especially young children, um, in having a life without punishment. Right. What it does is it supports those children in living from an open heart. It keeps them from having to walk on eggshells in their own house, wondering when they're going to get punished. And it also means that when they're adults, in all of their relationships, they're going to have stronger, healthier relationships because they're not incorporating punishment. Um, if we stop and think, sometimes even in our most intimate relationships, if we get angry or upset, oftentimes our first response is to punish that other person. And all that does is degrade the relationship. So, my first aspiration is, of course, to change those lives. Clearly, I would like to see the book do well, to have consistent sales, to ensure that as many people as possible are getting the message. And then, as I've shared, I have goals of adding on additional components that can support people in learning these concepts, whether that's in person workshops or online workshops or speaking in front of groups or even one on one mentoring. All of those aspirations are part of this project as well.
Well said, Miss Rebecca. So, how do you think the publishing industry is changing, and what does not mean for authors?
hmm Yeah, I have, I'm have several years on this planet, and I was around. I actually many, many years ago worked as a graphic designer and was in a more traditional publishing world. And at that time, it was magazines rather than books. Um, but still recognizing that it was a environment where uh, only professional documents, whether it's a magazine or a book or um, even things like this podcast, none of that happened 20, 30 years ago. It was strictly a professional industry. And then, as we know, the internet has changed so much of our lives and has really made the ability for individuals to participate. And personally, I think that's a good thing. I think it means that we get a wider range of voices, which is important. We make it possible for individuals to participate without having to invest tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think it certainly has expanded our literacy and the availability of information. So it really has come full circle, or not full circle. It's 180 degrees. It's so different now than what it used to be, and now it's opened the doors to individual or independent publishing, as well as professional publishing.
Certainly. So, what role do social media and online platforms play in your writing career?
hmm So I've really just started to get involved with social media in my writing career. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. I think podcasts are an excellent way to share the message of any book. I think that the ability to have a website, Instagram, Facebook pages, all of that give authors today the ability to get the word out to reach a variety of audiences and to really promote um, the work that's within the book. So certainly using digital tools, whether that is social media, um, this online course, to be able to connect with parents via Zoom, right? All of these digital technologies have just transformed the experience of connecting with others and sharing the messages of books.
How do you approach writing for different genres or audiences?
So I, at this point, have just written the one book, although as like many authors, I have some others in mind. And so, um, the second book that I'm working on is one for relationships, thinking through uh, what what do people need to know to have a punishment-free relationship in their lives, and what would that mean? And that's a little bit different audience. And so I think what I do is I picture someone who falls into that audience. So when it came to writing the book about parenting, I pictured friends who had young children, colleagues in the workplace who had young children. What would they want to hear? How would they want to hear it? What would support them in being accepting of the information? So as an example, in the parenting book, I talk about um, n- not feeling guilty as a parent, that the suggestions in the book, every single person needed to decide if that was what's right for their family, that I wasn't telling them that this is what you absolutely have to do. But here's some ideas. In fact, here's two or three ways that you could handle this situation. And depending on your family, your child, your values, it's important for them. So, creating a space in that book for parents to relax and feel like they could easily take in the information in the book. As I shift to an audience of adults who are concerned about their primary relationship with their partner, that message and that tone and the way that I approach the information will change because that's a different audience. But really, almost just writing down, here's this person who I know would enjoy this book, and what do they love, and how do they respond, and where do they shop, right? Just really thinking through that audience.
Well said, Miss Rebecca. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the five-star restaurants in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our book, People, Food 101, Volume 12, Italian Cuisine. And plus one more, our books are out, not only one, but 13 volumes, people. Food 101, Volume 1 Basics until 13 is only the books that you need. How to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Miss Rebecca, can you please invite our listeners to support the gift of punishment free childhood?
Absolutely. So I do have a website and it's based on my name. So it's Rebecca, Rebecca Woulfe, Woulfe, um, @.com. So lots of information there. And then the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble websites. And again, it's The Gift of a Punishment Free Childhood. And would love to invite our listeners to take a look at it. I think it's something that, again, it's not hard to read. It hopefully will make you smile, and hopefully will give you some ideas on how to uh, parent for a brighter future.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Rebecca Wolf because if you support her, more books to come. Right, Miss Rebecca?
That's right.
So, Miss Rebecca, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Thank you, Fitchfat, for being the number two best book podcast on the planet. And my latest score, according to listen notes, of 26 and belong to 10% popular show globally. Thank you so much. More to come, people. See you soon.